What is up, everyone? Welcome to this week's Nerdball Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host and astronaut aboard the Pitts 8 Moon Expedition, Pete Rogers. And I am joined today by some of the nerds. We have resident old man and vice secretary of the Sam Darnold Hype Train Railroad LLC, Clark Barnes, and founder and lone member of the Devontae Adams' Average Club, the Ginger Woodsman, Nick Botiford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Good, Pete. How are you?
I am good. I'm also mortified. For those who didn't listen, we dropped, and by we, I mean Nick really dropped the very first Nerding Out with Nick Botiford on last week on Thursday, which is going to be a new weekly show we're doing where Nick just sets aside 40 minutes of his life to talk nothing but fantasy football with whomever is willing to join him. But you dear listener, would be shocked to hear Nick open the show by saying, "Welcome to Nerding Out with Nick Botiford. I am Nick Botiford." And I was like, what? Have I been saying this man's name wrong for the last 4 years? And dear listener, I have been doing just that. So it is Nick Botiford, not Nick Botiford.
How nice Nick is, though.
I know. Nick just
never,
like rolling
he's like,
with
it's fine.
it. He's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're butchering my name, but it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, my family, like half of them don't even get it right. So when people say like, I just don't care. When my significant other was listening to it and she was like just looked at me from across the room. I was like, yeah, you get it wrong too.
Well, I swear to you, Nick, that I will never get it wrong from here on out. It will be Nick Botiford. And in fact, I will emphasize it so much people will think that you're a member of the Ford family. And in that case, you should really be bankrolling this entire site. So kind of.
I would love hate that.
Yeah, well.
My dad's PE coach called him Chevy and thought that he was really funny.
I resisted making that joke just 8 seconds ago. I'm very proud of myself.
Love it. Love it. My first joke as a kid, because my middle name is McDonald, but it's not McDonald. But my first joke as a kid was Pete Burger King Rogers was my first joke as a child. But it's that, it kind of works, but it doesn't really even work. All right. Now that we got that settled, that was important. And it was honestly kind of really put a cloud over my whole weekend. And I'm just glad that that cloud has been lifted. The light has been shining on us, and it is time to talk running backs. It is running back week at nerdballff.com. We did all quarterback content last week, and this week we are diving into the running back position. We started off with Nick's top 60 backs for the year, which went live today on Monday, July 19th. Make sure you go check that out. There are some very saucy rankings in there. Some players who Nick has ranked well above their ADP. So guys who he thinks you can be getting great steals for. As always, for these deep dive positional episodes, we have 4 categories we're going to talk about today. We have our top running back we're targeting in the first 3 rounds, our top running back we're targeting in the 9th round or later, the running back we're avoiding this year at their current ADP, and then of course one bold prediction for the position. So let us start with the running back we are targeting in the top 3 rounds, also known as And I will start us off because I'm talking about the running back with the highest ADP, and that is Ezekiel Elliott for the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, when Dak was under center through weeks 1 through 5, Zeke was the RB3 in half-point PPR. So we know that Ezekiel Elliott is a guy who's, a top 3 fantasy back, and he's been that in the past too. Right now, you can get him as the RB6 going 106. So this is a discount to a man that we've seen be the RB1, seen be that top 3 regular player, and only 2 backs. I went back and did a little research, you guys, a little data dig. Only 2 backs in the last 3 years have had at least 15 attempts and 50 targets in each of those seasons, and it's Ezekiel Elliott and Alvin Kamara. And so Zeke's workload, both in the ground and the passing game, is locked in 100%. I think the emergence of Tony Pollard isn't really going to have an impact on his overall value because of the fact it's a 17-week season now. And I think that when you balance they're going to maybe balance Zeke more with Tony Pollard, but that's not going to cut into what we're used to a Zeke level workload, like used to a 16-week workload. I just think he has easy contention to be the RB1 this year. If I get him as like my RB1 going, like if I'm drafting in the middle of a draft and I get Zeke Elliott as my RB1, I am happy as can be. I have him ranked as my RB1 this year ahead of both Kamara and Barkley, who are going ahead of him. So Zeke Elliott in those first 3 rounds, that is one of my top running back targets for sure this year.
Yeah, I like Zeke, one of the guys who can do most of the work for a team. Like you said with Pollard, I think he's shown to be electric, but he's shown to be electric. It seems like a lot of times it's like 3rd and 15. He looks really great on that 3rd and 12 yards that he picks up. But the pie should be growing in Dallas immensely. And I think Elliott's going to retain a big slice of that pie, hopefully this year, just punching in a bunch of easy touchdowns.
Also, Zeke got fit as hell. So if you want to track that at home,
there you go.
Always a win.
Honestly, that's kind of a relief. He was looking a little bit out of shape last year, but he's still in the like peak age zone for a running back, which I think this is going to be his age 26 season, and that's kind of the final year typically of running back prime when it comes to fantasy points scored on a season. So we like that. Dak being back makes everything better. We like running backs on good offenses, and we really like good running backs in good offenses. I think the world of Tony Pollard, but the Cowboys don't seem to. They like when Zeke is healthy or available, he's out there and he dominates snaps, he dominates touches. Hopefully we get to see Pollard somewhere else one day, or if Zeke ends up off the Cowboys at some point, we can see Pollard then. But until then, you've got a guy who's going to push for like 25 touches per game in a really good offense. And there's a lot of running backs you can say are going to hit that like 18 touch threshold or 20 touch threshold. But Zeke is a candidate to go over that every week. And again, Cowboys are probably going to be top 5 scoring offense. If not, top 10 at worst. He's going to have a lot of inside the 5 touches. So yeah, I think I've got him as my RB3 this year.
Yeah. The Cowboys also, final point is not only are they getting Dak back, they're also getting like members of their offensive line back and healthy, which they had obviously, a couple of years ago, one of the best offensive lines in football. That's been hit with injuries and retirements. But getting some semblance of that core back together, obviously will have a huge benefit to Zeke's fantasy potential. Give us your what are we on? What is this? You're a big spender for the running back position.
So big spender. I feel really confident in Austin Ekeler this year, and we've talked about him quite a bit. Clark and I touched on him in last week's Nerding Out episode, so I'll keep it short. But first things first, the coaching changes this year are huge. Anthony Lynn, to his credit, he did have the team throw to running backs a lot, and even did it on early downs. They got there all the way without having an analytics department, and kudos to them. But again, we like good running backs in good offenses, and having Brandon Staley, who's an analytically inclined coach, as well as Joe Lombardi, who really struggled when he was in Detroit years ago, but then was the number 2 man in New Orleans for the last like 5 years. They've had some pretty remarkable success in New Orleans, and I can't credit Lombardi for all of their specific accomplishments, but being in the scheming room with Sean Payton while they're doing all of this, you're going to pick up some invaluable information. So I like Ekeler a lot. Per sharpfootballstats.com, their rush defense efficiency of opponents this year is slated to be the easiest schedule of the entire league. I think it's going to be a season where we see Ekeler surpass whatever career touch total he has had. And if anyone's concerned about like his size or his ability to bang in between the tackles, he had a significant injury last year that part of the hamstring ripped off the bone. Go look at the touch or the fantasy point totals after he came back. He was regularly in the high teens during that time. So this dude's the real deal, and it's going to be the best offense he's ever played in. So get him. People are starting to catch on, but drafters need to take him seriously as a top 5 option.
Yeah, for sure. You should be drafting Ekeler with those top, like if you miss out on run CMC, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. I'm trying to think, Zeke. Like Austin Eckler is a great. It's not even a consolation prize. Like he is in that category for myself and obviously for Nick, you too. And one thing that I have seen some people batting around is just like, oh well, Austin Eckler's work in the passing game is going to decrease because Justin Herbert doesn't check it down like Phillip Rivers. Austin Eckler last year was on pace for 104 targets with Justin Herbert under center. And his last year with Phillip Rivers, he saw 108 targets. So don't really think that passing game work is going anywhere for Eckler. And like you said, like if he is getting the bulk of the work on the ground and seeing 100 plus targets, that's a top 5 running back all day. No doubt about it.
Yeah, Chargers should be exciting. And I think I was the last Eckler detractor on the show, but have been convinced.
We have worn you down.
Yeah, the last bit for me was just, he gets injured in a small. And, you do a little research, you find out that's not really the case. He was just injured last year. And that's what's fresh in your mind. So yeah. I think he is kind of a consolation prize, but he's a good consolation prize. He's one of those guys that if you pick it like 110, you can come with 2 of these running backs that sort of have a few warts and get 2 good backs instead of having to wait until pick 23, 24 when you picked earlier in the round.
Yeah. Austin Eckler right now per FF calculator is going RB10, 111, tied with Aaron Jones. They're both going 111. If you're like right at that one, end of the first round turn, Austin Eckler and pairing like Austin Eckler and Antonio Gibson as your first 2 backs. Oh my God, please and thank you. Or Austin Eckler and Clark, your big spender.
Yeah, my guy's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This is a glass half full, glass half empty situation for some with what Clyde Edwards-Helaire did in his rookie season. The way I look at it, did 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, playing in 13 games. It's pretty good. I was one of those people that let the hype get way out of hand about how excited they got with CEH, but that doesn't take away from what he did as a rookie. The Chiefs have let every other running back go, and so he is kind of cleared for takeoff and touches. I think he's probably like a 65% of the snaps and touches guy, which is plenty with him going into a second year. So simple, but it's that you burned me once fantasy rebounds, giving him a pretty nice discount.
And we've talked about this before in the show, but like the narrative of him not being their goal line back is factually false. He was by far and away the Chiefs' primary back in there when they got into the red zone. He saw the vast majority of touches. Now, obviously, were they as efficient as they could have been? No, he's 5'7" and 200 pounds and was coming in a weird COVID season. And the Chiefs do like to do a lot of motion and use Patrick Mahomes as a rusher down there, Travis Kelce, whole 9 yards. But the point being that this thought that the touches in the red zone are going to go to someone else, or you need to worry about Clyde Edwards-Helaire only being able to score from 20 yards out, a la Devin Singletary. That's not true, at least according to what happened last year. And Clark, you're totally right. The Chiefs then went out of their way to get rid of all of the running backs who really could contend with that role. So it seems like it's CEH, all systems go. And if you wanted to draft him last year as an RB1, you can. Nothing has changed about his situation except for his ADP, which has gotten cheaper. So seems like a win.
Yeah, again, good running backs, good offenses. If you do go with that Eckler CEH pairing at the 1-2 turn, those guys could combine for like 150 receptions.
Yeah,
like yeah.
It's one of the reasons why as I've done a bunch of mock drafts so far, and I've just been like bouncing all over the draft board to see what kind of spot I kind of hope to land on. Being at the back end of drafts this year and getting that snake and being able to like stockpile 2 potential RB1, like 2 potential top 5 guys at running back with my first 2 picks in one of my leagues. Whoever's in this league, stop listening right now. Just like, take out your headphones because I'm about to give away some state secrets. We do a Sporkle quiz to determine draft order. Whoever won the league last year gets to pick the Sporkle quiz. And then you based on whoever on your scores, that's how you rank for draft order. I might just bomb the Sporkle quiz. So I get the final pick in the first round. So I get that snake. So put your earphones back in, everybody. Let's move on to our second category, some players, running backs in the 9th round or later that we are targeting. Nick, it's time to go.
Hey, Macklemore, can we go thrift shopping?
And we're not going to go to a bar. Nick, who are you going thrift shopping for?
So for those curious, I wrote this up at the end of the top 60 running backs article that came out this morning, but I'm going thrift shopping for Jamal Williams. When Anthony Lynn, now offensive coordinator of the Lions, called Williams a classic A-back, what was that, like a month or so ago, or end of May, I think, we all kind of panicked and went, oh crap, what does that mean for DeAndre Swift? And it seems as though the drafting public has not really processed what that in turn means for Jamal Williams. If you look through the 3 years that Anthony Lynn was in, he was there for 4, but if you look through the 3 years that Anthony Lynn was in Los Angeles or San Diego, when Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler were playing together, it's clear that it seems like what he means by this A back and B back is just large dual threat back and small dual threat back, because Melvin Gordon was out targeting Austin Eckler in some of those years. Jamal Williams, I mean, what he was most known for when he was in Green Bay is stealing passing game work and some stuff inside the red zone, but like stealing a ton of passing game work from Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones still managed to put up these gaudy totals, but like, Williams drove everybody crazy. He's an excellent pass protector, but 2, he's also a very good pass catcher. He's kind of slow, but he's proficient in all of these areas of the game. Right now, DeAndre Swift, who I suppose, like to infer here, he is the B back. He's going as the running back 18, average draft position of 3.05. Jamal Williams, meanwhile, is going as the running back 44 at 9.08. If I'm getting the guy who seems to have a chance at half of the Lions backfield touches, which, I mean, the Lions, they're not going to throw. 1, they have Anthony Lynn, and 2, they have Jared Goff. They're not going to be a pass first team. They're going to be a run first team. Now, these may be really ugly touches that Williams racks up, but as the RB 44 right now in the 9th round, I mean, you could get like a volume-based low-end RB2 or at worst a weekly flex play with this. So I'm all in on Jamal Williams as an ugly but perhaps gaudy or proficient flex running back.
Yeah. Williams has like had a pretty consistent, despite the fact that like you were saying that he felt like he always just stole touches. But if you look at his numbers, he's seen at least 100 plus rushing attempts and at least 35 targets every season since entering the league, which is a decent, reliable workload. And now leaving Green Bay, going to Detroit, where he's going to be that number 2 back, and in an offense that might really try to make it a 1A, 1B rather than a 1 and 2 option. I think Clark and I were talking about this earlier today, where it's like DeAndre Swift's ADP is getting down to the point now where it's like, ooh, maybe like I do start drafting him because of the fact that his value is so diminished and the upside is there. But it's also like, or do I wait 10 rounds and I get a guy who obviously is not going to put up the gaudy numbers that DeAndre Swift might, but is going to be a reliable contributor and could piss off enough people, like enough DeAndre Swift managers that, maybe at a certain point I can try to upsell him in the middle of the year as a handcuff.
Yeah. Taking someone like him so late is betting on he has the coaching catnip skill set. He's kind of like another type of Gus Edwards for an offense who's probably going to run as much, but not as effectively as the Ravens. And I think it's funny. The way it's described by people, I guess, who didn't have Jamal Williams is it's stealing touches, but to you're just watching your flex play just take touches from, the big running back in town. And that's just twice as fun on all those points. Being the vulture instead of the vulture.
The vulture. The vulture. Clark, why don't you give us your thrift shopping back for this year?
Yeah, mine's one that I've been pounding the table for in the offseason already. Giovanni Bernard. He's going, I think, in like the 12th round. And this is ninth round and onward running backs, you just have to convince yourself that there's a story and tell it to you and then believe it because it's the ninth round. So Gio is just a pass catching back who's going to be playing with Tom Brady, and his leading competition for targets out of the backfield will be Leonard Fournette. So I feel like he's worth taking a shot to get 120, 130 targets this year. And then, like Jamal Williams, be a really solid flex for you that you can get super late.
Let me take away 2020. James White's career playing with Tom Brady, he has averaged 800. Oh, not 800. I added a zero there. 86 targets in a season. So I am flabbergasted. Like, I hope that this doesn't happen, but I am absolutely flabbergasted at Giovanni Bernard's current ADP. And I have to think it's going to like steadily increase as we get closer and closer to end of August and early September, especially if we see any kind of stories like Giovanni Bernard emerging as Tom Brady's favorite pass catcher out of the backfield. Like, that's just going to send him skyrocketing. But Gio, right, if you were drafting right now, I would absolutely be thrilled to, like, I would draft Gio in the 8th round because I just think that the workload that he's going to step into is going to be immense. He has proven to be a competent and good pass catcher out of the backfield. He did that for the Bengals for his entire career. And now stepping into a quarterback who demands that. Like, that is a vital part of Tom Brady's efficiency, to the point where they were force-feeding targets to Leonard Fournette, who can't catch the football. It just seems like a match made in heaven. And as soon as that happens, as soon as that clicks, like, Gio has, especially in PPR, Gio has, flex value easy for me.
Yeah, the other backs are just god awful in the receiving game. Gio, he had the torn Achilles that probably sapped him of his high end potential, but I think Gio's downside might be that they just use these guys as like hardcore role guys, and he just doesn't get that many carries.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that Tom Brady is excited to get Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones back out there again. And if Bernard can actually still rush to some degree, like, I don't know, 120 total touches seems really reasonable to me.
Just again, let's see. James White in 2019 had 95 targets and 67 carries and finished the RB29 in standard. I don't have PPR up in front of me, but like, even James White has made it a career of basically being a wide receiver out of the backfield and not really running the ball and still putting up fantasy reliable performances. And even if Gio doesn't see much groundwork, I feel like that passing game is going to be more than able to carry him. All right, my final, wrapping up the segment, my thrift shopper, the guy who I'm going for, is the rookie running back in New York, Michael Carter, who I was super high on, still am, but wrote an article when the draft first came out, or first concluded, about my favorite draft landing spots. And he was one of them. He has a 10.81 on his agility score for Player Profiler, which puts him in the 98th percentile in the league for that. And obviously, when in North Carolina, his senior year, he averaged 8 yards per carry. What this means, this explosiveness, this ability to cut and move quickly, which, is perfect for the zone running scheme that presumably Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur are bringing over from San Francisco. The Jets have improved their offensive line with 2 first-round picks last year, or a first-round pick last year in Mekhi Becton, and a first-round pick this year in, I forget his name, but it's 3 names, something Elijah Vera Tucker. There it is. I remembered. There's really not that much competition in front of him. Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson. I know Clark and Nick are trying to make Ty Johnson a thing, just like Fetch, but Fetch is never going to happen. So let's not make it happen. It's just, he's going as the RB42 at the beginning of the 9th round. Michael Carter, I have done some mocks and I have drafted him as wildly as my flex option, as my RB3, because I think I have him ranked as my RB26 for this year. To me, it's just like he could walk into a massive workload in an offense that we know can run the football, and he is a perfect mold to fit that offense.
Yeah, it's a nice shot to take, even on a rookie, because the rookie has the skill set that we want to look for with running backs. Is he's pretty proficient catching the ball, and he's a Matt Waldman favorite, which is always good
Always
tally
gets the
to
seal of
have
approval
with
from this
ya.
podcast.
Right. And he's good. Now he's a little small and, kind of ran in the shadow of Javonte Williams, but they both looked really good. And he looked like a good decision maker, which is, really important for a zone scheme back. And if you can excel at that, the sky is the limit. So again, you can tell yourself the story of how he gets the running back one job, and it's sky's the limit.
Yeah, I recommend everyone checks out the AFC East preview that's on its way out. Really high on Michael Carter, Pete.
Nick
I've also got him
Botafour
as the
dropping some
RB26
go
this
check
year.
me out online.
Quick nuggets on this Shanahan run scheme that I assume these guys are going to try to employ. You have Saleh, as you said, Pete, at head coach, and one of the LaFleur guys who's been with Shanahan for a few years now as the offensive coordinator. They rush three backs a lot. They throw to their running backs a lot on early downs. It's over the last 4 years, the third highest rate, I think, in the league at like 26% of their first half early down targets go to the running back position, which I believe is third in the league. Carter, obviously, passing game specialist. As for the Ty Johnson thing, I think really it's just connected to the fact that none of us like Tevin Coleman. He has done good things from time to time, but he's very old and he gets hurt all the goddamn time. Throwing darts in what I think will be a multiple backfield. Johnson has been a totally fine rusher, and it seems to me like he would be a great guy to change the pace for what I think will be lead back Michael Carter in New York.
Yeah. Tevin Coleman going as the RB54, middle of the 12th round. Ty Johnson not even being drafted according to
nobody knows. It's the Jets, but so late, it's a shot worth taking.
100%. Name of the game when you go thrift shopping. You find that old tattered Hawaiian and you're like, do I need this? No, but do I look damn good in it? Yes, I'm buying it. Nick, do you not own any Hawaiians? Are you too cool for Hawaiians?
Nah, I was just trying to put you down.
How dare you? The audacity. Now you're back to Nick Botiford. My good graces have ended. You've ruined it, Nick. You've ruined it. Before we move on to running backs we're avoiding, I want to quickly let you know that we do, in fact, have a Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff, and we offer all kinds of perks for those who subscribe. We got a Discord channel to talk football, around the clock start sit advice, play in a league with us this year, all kinds of goodies for those who want to contribute. Plus, during the season, we want to have a mailbag section to the podcast where we answer your questions. So if you want to make sure your most pressing cues during the season make it onto the show, consider supporting us over on Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff. All right. So running backs we are avoiding, also known as I get the sound drop ready for the segment. And Clark, why don't you start us off? Because the running back you're avoiding at his ADP, I'm actually quite curious to your explanation for it.
Yeah, we're splitting the finest of hairs here. So I'm avoiding Dalvin Cook, not because he's not good, just because he's had a lot of injuries that tend to recur with shoulders for running backs. The re-injury for this, the rate, I think your friend Derek Porras, Dr. David...
Edwin Porras.
I knew I was wrong.
And then there's
close.
David Chow.
Yeah.
Combining the two Twitter internet doctors.
Yeah. Anyway, point being, the re-injury rate for a shoulder that's been dislocated is pretty high. Dalvin Cook's done it with both. Now, the injury-prone argument, I'm not going to make an injury-prone argument, but when you injure something that you ram into other people really, really hard and there's a high propensity for re-injury, well, then that's when I think that you can come into the conversation of it might happen again. It's just too high. I think last year he was going 108, 109, and if I could get him there this year, I'd be all in. But at 102, it's just too much. I have Zeke in front of him. I think I have Kamara in front of him. I have a couple of other guys. It's just too rich for me.
Clark, I can tell you have, in fact, 9 running backs ahead of him because you have him currently ranked as our running back 10 in Nerdball FF staff rankings. Nick, you have him as your RB8 as well. So he's all the way down on our staff rankings average, down at RB7 this year, which I think that I have him as my RB3 just because I think that obviously the full workload and potential that he's going to see in Minnesota makes it really hard to not have him there. But Clark, you make a really good point in that, especially the shoulder injury, that is something that if it flares up, we saw it flare up a couple times last year, and it's not going to keep him out for a huge period of time, but it does have him miss a couple of weeks here and there, which is not really what you want for your first RB1, right? Like, especially for myself, when I am drafting, when I'm making one of those first two picks, the guy who I want that person to be, I don't have to, I plug you into my lineup. I don't think about you for the rest of the season. You're good to go. And needing to make sure that I have a backup, an Alexander Madison. I had to quickly sing Alexander Hamilton in my head to remember his last name. But if I need to have that on my roster, or if I need to make sure that like the RB, I'm not taking flyers for the running back position from here on out, like that is a little worrisome. So I definitely get the point that you're making there, Clark, where it's like everything works for him. He's clearly a top 3 back, but the injuries that he has are ones that could easily rear their ugly head yet again in 2021.
Yeah. I think that Clark did a good job kind of conceptualizing for all of us laymen how risky it is to just have shoulder injuries, period. He's dislocated both shoulders, I think, a combined like 3 or 4 times at this point. He also had the torn ACL, and there's never been anything definitive from this. As you mentioned, Clark, Dr. Porras has done a lot of work on this. The typical place where you get the ACL graft from is the patellar tendon, which freaks me the hell out. I don't know why anyone would do that, but that's typically what NFL players do. The secondary place, though, is from the hamstring, and Cook has had hamstring issues at kind of an elevated rate. So Dr. Porras has at least wondered aloud if that also might be the case, that he maybe had a hamstring graft to fix the ruptured ACL that he had a few years back. I don't know. He doesn't know. But with all of these injury questions abound, I would rather take someone who doesn't have those kinds of recurring injuries. That said, when he's healthy, he's a top 3 fantasy running back. It's just, do you want one for looking at his games played total for the 4 years that he's been in the league? 2017, 4 games, 2018, 11, 2019, 14, 2020, 14. Last 2 years aren't so bad, but anyway, yeah, it's just he just carries unique risk for that position in the first round.
Yeah, no, I think those are all really good points. I was skeptical as to your reasoning, but you're more than persuaded me.
This is why not to take him at 102. Not
right.
Why to not take him.
Right. But it's really good. That is a really good thought to have in your mind, though, when you're making that high pick, because it is such an investment. And if, it is a nagging injury that could completely dismantle a season. And it's something we know about. It's something we've seen before flare up. And so it's definitely something to take into consideration when you're making that pick that high. The running back who I am just completely avoiding at their ADP this year is Cam Akers, who's been just completely hyped up to being like a clear-cut RB1, like the second coming of I don't know who, someone. Despite only having 3 double-digit fantasy games last year, he's going as the RB11, end of the first round. People are drafting him to be like, he is the clear-cut RB1 in LA. Is that true? They're gushing over 3 starts at the end of last year from weeks 14 onward, and in that time, he was the RB25 in half points PPR points per game scoring. He's going ahead of Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson. He's ranked as my RB23 this year. I don't understand why Cam Akers is such a presumed favorite to be like the clear back in LA when Darrell Henderson looked better last year, was used better, was used in the passing game more. Akers just saw no passing work. Convinced me otherwise. I will not touch Cam Akers if he even remains in maybe at the tail end of the second round, but if he stays in that first round, there's no way I'm drafting him.
To the season. And he had a couple of games there where he did look really good and he was getting the ball in those creative ways. And I got really excited about him. I was looking at our ranks. I have him at 16. So while you're extolling the pitfalls of drafting him where he's going, apparently I agree with you to scare me to 16. But he's kind of like Dalvin Cook, where like if I'm at 107 and Cook falls to me and then Akers is on the way back, well, then we're bragging about how great my team is. But inside the first round, it is pretty presumptuous to think that he's going to get all the work when the others on the running back staff looked really good. Also, I do love Akers though.
So I'm gonna let somebody else make this point for me. Pete, for your reading convenience, I've just retweeted it. Dwayne McFarland at Dwayne, spelled DWAIN, of the Fantasy Football Hustle, does excellent, like I cannot emphasize this enough, excellent utilization work. His top pin tweet is Cam Akers utilization thread. The long story short is that's the first part not included in there. Akers suffered a really painful rib injury in week 2 of last year, and that kind of derailed his season for the meat of it. But what this dude has in athleticism is outrageous. Like his 10-yard split is 1.48 seconds, which is like probably possibly fastest in the league right now. But anyway, when it comes to Dwayne McFarland's utilization thread, what you basically see is that in season, once he regained his health, he was seeing way more of the rushing work than Henderson was. Henderson was kind of just like bounced out of that role. He was losing passing game work to Malcolm Brown, but Malcolm Brown ended up missing some of their playoff games. And when that happened, we saw Akers' passing game usage, both the 2-minute drill and the long down and distance work, shot up. And now with Malcolm Brown in Miami, the coaching staff kind of showed us last year that they don't think that Henderson is the guy that should be taking passing game work. So the way that I'm looking at this backfield, and it's taken me a long time to come around on this, I am looking at Cam Akers as the 20-touch guy per game. And I think Henderson is just going to be sort of the direct backup. I still like Henderson a lot as a late round pick because his ADP is like in the middle of nowhere. And so, yeah. So like draft a guy. I think that there's still a little bit of ambiguity in this because we are projecting, it's like a 4-game sample size. So that's fair. I can't fault anyone. I drafted Henderson in a dynasty league a little while ago in like the 15th round. And I think that's a great place to take him. But for 2021, it does appear that the coaches showed us that Akers is the number 1 guy in the backfield. That said, I don't think I'm as high as consensus with other websites. He's my running back 11. I'm the highest on this site, but we're gonna have to see. There's gonna be some movement as we continue to learn more. And if we see, that preseason game, that first preseason game comes around, if Akers goes out there and he gets the first drive and that's it, we all need to pay a ton of attention to that. So anyway, yeah, I'm in with a top 12 season for Cam Akers, thinking more back end of top 12, but I'm open to the possibility that he's actually like a mid-tier guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's one of it seems like at least several very key second-year running backs that there's definitely a camp of everyone projecting them forward, and then a camp of people who are saying they aren't going to take the steps. So we got J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers. Could be a big year for running back.
Yeah, it's a saucy position. What I'm most curious about, and this is a little more of a holistic look, I'm most curious about like what is the middle of the draft going to look like, because it definitely feels like as we were doing this, those top guys, everyone's talked enough about the top, like 20 backs that you kind of know in your own head what your order you're thinking of, but like the 21 through 40 guys, it just feels like a hodgepodge of like potential hits and like a lot of misses. So I'm going to be really curious to see how those guys, like the Damian Harris's, the Myles Gaskin. I think even Miles Sanders is down in the high 20s right now. So I think a lot of those guys will be curious to see how it plays out.
So it seems so far, early drafts we've done, like our fantasy nerdball friends draft, the public, their general consensus has swung back to drafting running backs early. And so now is the time to do 0 RB, because a lot of wide receivers are just not going super early in these drafts. So that you just kind of want to zig when everybody else is zagging. Everybody thinks running backs are so solid, but these guys that we've mentioned, like Giovanni Bernard, Jamal Williams, all these guys, that's how you start your 0 RB season while you're waiting for someone to come up or for a new workload to appear. So I don't mind those late rounds.
Yeah, they're important. Nick, why don't you wrap up the people who were backs we're not touching?
I ain't touching Chase Edmonds. So I've been on Chase Edmonds for a couple years.
I know this is quite the turn of face, Nick.
Yeah, no.
Which just goes to show that's why you listen to this show, because we're not too proud to not admit when we're wrong. For instance, I opened the show admitting how wrong I was about Nick's last name, and then Nick in turn ridiculed me mercilessly throughout the show, and now I've turned back on my ways. So
it takes a big man to admit that he was wrong, and I was wrong. So I thought that 2020 was going to be the season that Edmonds like finally breaks out and just smashes the opposition. And he had fewer carries last year than Kyler Murray. He played all 16 games. He had a very good receiving year, both with his totals and like his PFF receiving grades. Awesome. Woohoo. We love that. But the thing is with this offense, they really pass the ball around. I mean, Hopkins is going to go get his, but if you look at the target totals for the next, 4 or 5 guys, Christian Kirk, 79, Larry Fitzgerald, 72, Edmonds, again, who played all 16 games, 67, Dan Arnold, 45. They like to move around, move the ball around. Cliff Kingsbury, he runs the air raid, but he still does like to run the ball a lot. They brought in James Conner, who I don't know if he's going to stay healthy, but like, they clearly aren't showing us that they're excited to give a full workload to Chase Edmonds. And the red zone work last year, my God, Kenyon Drake had 57 red zone rushes. Kyler Murray had 20. Chase Edmonds only had 16. I mean, they're giving their quarterback more inside the 20 carries than Edmonds is, or than Edmonds was seeing, excuse me. I believed in the dude, but he has a good pass catching skill set, but he just does not seem to be able to put it together on the ground, and the personnel moves do not seem to indicate that the team wants to give him a full workload. So I'm really out on Edmonds. If I'm doing some crazy 0 RB build, I could see it, but yeah, not by no means is Chase Edmonds a target of mine.
And even the guys who are going around him in the 5th round, Mike Davis. So Chase Edmonds is going RB 27 and 509 in the 5th. Mike Davis, 501, Raheem Mostert, 503, Travis Etienne, 512, Melvin Gordon, and Javonte Williams at the beginning of the 6th round. Like, all of those guys have a little more appealing to me, and from a little bit to a lot more bit appealing to me than Chase Edmonds. I also think that the signing of James Conner shouldn't be overlooked as just we'll take a flyer on him and see what happens. It's James Conner is the perfect running back to be like, you buy low on him, and if he puts it together, he was signed to be their RB1 if he can achieve that. They were signing him on a cheap deal to see if he could be what we've seen at times in Pittsburgh, to be like the running back of this backfield, in my opinion. And so that's completely overlooking Chase Edmonds. I think you're totally right, Nick. Chase Edmonds went from a guy who I think a lot of people were pretty saucy on to I feel like he's just been regularly dropping throughout. His ADP has just been crashing as we get further and further into the summer. All right. Let us wrap up then with some bold predictions and get ourselves ready to get rocked. Some good old Def Leppard there. And I'll start us off. I mentioned Miles Sanders before. Miles Sanders, let me bring up I had my stats and information right in front of me, and then I closed it, and I'm going to bring it right back up. Miles Sanders going as the RB21, end of the 3rd round. I think Miles Sanders finishes a fringe RB1 this year. I know we were really hyped about him last year, and I was very hyped, and I drafted him, and I was disappointed, to say the least. Which wasn't great, but I'm back on the bandwagon this year. And that's because, like I said earlier, and I tweeted this out, let me bring up my Twitter. You think I would be prepared on these things. I said on the show earlier where I was talking about how Ezekiel Elliott and Alvin Kamara are the only 2 running backs to have had at least 150 attempts and 50 targets in each of the last 3 years. 6 backs in that time period have done it twice. Saquon Barkley in 2018, 2019, Dalvin Cook 2019, 2020, Christian McCaffrey 18, 19, Aaron Jones 19, 20, Miles Sanders 19, 20, and then Melvin Gordon 18, 19. Melvin Gordon, we don't care about anymore. I'm completely sold my house on Melvin Gordon Hill. It's Javonte Williams or bust. But Miles Sanders, low key, over the last 2 years, has seen at least 150 rush attempts and 50 targets, which is something I didn't anticipate given the kind of the narrative surrounding him. I do think that this is an offense that is going to be different. We can all hope with Jalen Hurts under center, and actually, as opposed to what you would normally think. I know a rushing quarterback tends to help the ground game, but hurt the passing game. Miles Sanders was on pace to beat both of his attempts and targets with Jalen Hurts in those last 4 games than without them, with Carson Wentz under center last year. So I just think that there is a narrative here where Miles Sanders gets a new offense, rejuvenates him. The workload is there. It's been consistent. And with that workload, he's going to be more efficient, see some success, and finish like RB 15, RB 14, and more than outplay his ADP and more than give you a solid investment, a return on that investment.
Yeah, it seems nuts that this is a bold take, but Miles Sanders is kind of slipping, and he is the best running back that the Eagles have. For me, there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen in Philadelphia, but this might be another situation where maybe the ADP is going too far to correct. And someone who we didn't like at the beginning of the offseason is now someone we're interested in because they've fallen around.
I've been really high on Sanders the last 2 years. I appreciate those nice stats that you threw out there, Pete, about his receiving work. They invested in both Kenneth Gainwell in the draft and Devontae Smith. The team fired Howie Roseman for not throwing the ball enough, and they did throw a lot. I don't know. I'm just over a full 16-game season. I'm not optimistic that Miles Sanders is really going to see a lot of passing game work. We don't know if Boston Scott is going to end up making the roster, but if he does, it's going to be Gainwell and Scott as the 2 backs behind Sanders, who are, like passing-centric running backs. I have a tough time wanting to draft Sanders at ADP. He's my running back 18 right now, which is consensus for the site. But yeah, I think Sanders is going to be
still 3 points better than what he's currently being drafted as. So a win.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, maybe I need to reevaluate. I think he could have a really heavy carry workload this year, but yeah, I'm running back in a bad offense is not what we want.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a target of mine.
I think I might be responsible. Like, I have him as my running back 24. I'm going to have to revisit that. Might have to move him up a couple of notches based on Pete's strong argument here.
Yeah. What do I have? I think I just updated my rankings, and so I think I just moved him up. Miles Sanders, I have him as, I have as my RB 18. Wow. Talk about consistency, you guys. Patty, Nick, and myself, all of Miles Sanders is our RB 18. So it's Clark's fault that he's not our RB 18 in our staff rankings. Nick, give us your bold prediction for the running back position this year.
My bold prediction is that Najee Harris is going to finish outside of the top 24 at the running back position. I wanted to make sure everybody got really angry with this pick, but okay, so Najee Harris, I think that he profiles as a terrific running back for the modern day NFL, but he's going to be playing behind quite likely the worst offensive line in the league. And his quarterback is a guy who's got to wrap up his elbow in ice whenever he comes out of the game. I think that the volume is going to be there to be something special, but this guy could run for like 3.9 yards per carry. Like it could be so insanely ugly in this city. I don't want anything to do with him. Connor and his poor body really kind of broke down, but like Snell couldn't get it done last year. And now they've lost 3 offensive starters on the offensive line because Pouncey retired, DeCastro retired, and then Alejandro Villanueva, I believe he's gone as well. I mean, cohesion is integral for offensive line play. You even if they're like okay guys, you want them to have played together for a long time, but they're trying to replace 3 starters and all of the guys are bad. He could get there via counting stats, but I think this is going to be one that is really ugly. Like, I don't know, pick Jamal Williams instead.
Everything you said is true,
Yeah.
and
Go
I
ahead, Clark.
disagree. But it's bold take segment. And Nick,
And
I like that.
and
you're
that's
out
the
there.
whole point of it. That's the whole point of it. Nick, do you think it's reasonable that Najee Harris will see 300 rush attempts this year?
Yeah, can I say I think that he'll see like 350 touches or like combination of carries and targets. Yeah.
No, the only reason I bring it up is simply because I went on Pro Football Reference's stat head page right now, and I'm looking at every running back from 2000 onwards who's had at least 300 carries and what their fantasy production has been per game.
Okay.
So Eddie George in 2003 had 312 carries for 1,031 yards and 5 touchdowns. That is the worst PPR points per game. And he averaged 10.7 PPR points per game with 300 touches. So just again, that's the absolute worst in the last 10 years. For the most part, on average, you're getting upwards of 16 points per game in PPR if they're getting finishing the season with 300 plus carries.
Yeah.
So I didn't do your carries plus touches. So I think you're 100% right, Nick, in that it's going to be probably a really ugly and very inefficient rookie season for Najee Harris. The workload is hard for me to say no to. And if it was at the ADP, if this was like players you were avoiding at ADP, I'd be like, you know what, Nick, I understand. I vibe what you're saying and I get it. Najee Harris outside of the RB2 territory, outside of not finishing a RB24 is bold.
You know, your bold take is good when both the people on the pod, like, we're pretty supportive. Like, I don't agree with things that people say just to be nice. Like, if I disagree, I'll say it. But generally, you try to find that nugget that you agree with to continue the story.
Nice.
Nick, you know, you picked a good bold take when both of us were like, no, I don't like that.
Actually, you know what? Because I want to, because I don't have enough of them going on. Nick, would you be willing to spin the wheel for this?
That is
Every time.
Yes,
the bold take segment. That's
I know.
tough.
I'm taking advantage of Nick here, but that's okay. He's a true team player. Now I'm back to saying his name right. Clark, wrap us up with your final bold prediction for the running back position.
I feel bad about this now. Nick's is the spiciest.
I know. Nick is spicy as hell.
Nick wins the segment. Just fix it in post.
We'll get rid of all whatever we say, Clark, and we'll just have just Nick's segment.
Mine is Chris Carson's running back 8 or better for the season. He's going as the RB 16-ish. If you just look at what he did during the good Russell Wilson games, the first half of the season split, he finished about the 8-9-ish running back in points per game. So I'm just betting on Russell Wilson and Chris Carson being a little healthier. He's just a great value at the end of the third. Just pick him up anytime in the third, and I feel like you're going to end up with a very boring but good RB1.
Like, this is going to be the opposite of Nick's bold prediction, where we're all just like, good job, Clark. We all agree with you. I certainly agree with you.
That's how you know
RB8 for Chris Carson is perpetually underrated. And I think he is a lock for being my running back 3 in pretty much every single draft, because he lasts until then and has easy RB1 upside.
Trying to figure out the Seahawks offense can always be tricky.
Says the dejected Seahawks fan.
I think, so it's tough because I think that Schottenheimer was fired because of the type of passing game he wanted to run, i.e. early downs. And I think Waldron was brought in to be a yes man in that regard. Again, tip of the cap to Mr. McFarland. One thing he pointed out recently was that although the rushing attempts might increase, the overall pace might increase significantly too. The Rams play a lot of tempo. They get to the line and they hike the ball a lot. And if what we end up seeing here is unfortunately a higher volume of rushing attempts, but also just a drastically high number of plays, or much higher number of plays, as is typical for Seattle. Everyone could eat. I don't know. I'm beginning to reconsider, so at least the passing game in Seattle. But when it comes to Carson, health is really just the issue. The dude misses a lot of time, but he's a beast when he's out there.
Yeah, that is for sure. Well, there you go. There's our deep dive into the running back position for this year in fantasy football. Everything you could possibly need to know about the position: targets, avoids, sleepers, bold predictions. All of that, Nick's rankings, can be found nerdballff.com. Look at Porkchop's butt. He is flashing in a full display. Well, no, now it's gone, but it looked good. He was proud of it. And he wanted to show it off. That's all we got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. We are there. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NerdballFF. You can follow myself on Twitter at Peter M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark and Nick Botiford. God damn it. I was all proud that I was going to get it right, and then I failed it. At Ginger__Nick without a K. We will be back at you next week. Make sure you check out all the amazing content we're putting out over on the site, nerdballff.com. Until next week, my fellow nerds.